All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your host, myself, Alex Baquero, and Chris Patient 1762 Condit, your American villain voices, as always, serving up the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. Everyone go follow, like, rate, review, subscribe. We're getting new subscribers every day. 2 more shout outs at the end of this, so pay attention for your names. Chris, I'd ask how you're doing, but I'm afraid every time I serve it to you, you're just going to start coughing, and I'm going to need to keep talking again.
There's a good chance of that, Alex. My world is fire and blood, as
Ew.
Mad Max says in Fury Road. We had one kid go down with strep throat before the weekend last weekend, and then just as she recovered, the elder child went down with the flu. So we're 2 for 2 here in the span of a couple of days, and right now we're doing our best not to get sick. And as you can tell from the sound of my voice, I'm not exactly confident that I'm not sick. But otherwise, we're doing well. Everybody's doing great. How are you, Alex? Happy Hanukkah to you and yours.
Thank you, Chris. Happy Hanukkah to all our Jewish listeners out there. I'm doing well. We continue my nonstop sprint through life that seems to be this fall. So we were getting the house back in order over the weekend after I came back from LA. We then decided to host a first night of Hanukkah party. So I spent all yesterday cooking and cleaning and getting rooms set up, because tomorrow morning early I fly to New York. I will come back on Wednesday evening to one of my best friends already in my home because he lands earlier in the day. 2 more coming through the weekend, and then my parents coming on Monday next week. So we are apparently running a bed and breakfast and not getting paid for it, and that is my life nowadays.
It's only going to get worse. I can promise you that.
Yeah, that's what
better,
I'm
depending on your thought process.
I mean, I love to cook.
Yeah.
Tonight I was baking cookies for Katie's cookie exchange tomorrow, because she had to continue to work. So, yeah, orange spice.
What do we eat for the first night of Hanukkah party?
So we made a Jewish braised brisket. We made latkes. We had some applesauce, some noodle kugel, and then we had some of these orange spice molasses cookies for dessert.
Nice.
Yeah, we good over here in the Baquero household. Baquero, Jewish, most Jewish name that you could possibly
exactly. Like I said, when you told me you were Jewish, I did not have that pegged, because Baquero, not exactly a Jewish name.
Not exactly a Jewish name. Also not a Jewish name, anyone on West Ham or Aston Villa, Chris. So that's what we're here to talk about. But it was the match between them, a festival of lights. It was very sparkly with all the goals that went in and all the excitement of it. Not my best work, but I think we still got there in the end. Chris, let's talk about the setup going into this one. So we're wrong in a couple areas. So first off, Emi Martinez and Pau didn't pass late fitness tests, so they did not make it. But more importantly, both you and I thought that this was not a game to continue with Yuri Tielemans at the 10. We also said that West Ham were going to attack exclusively down the right-hand side with Jared Bowen. And being the least pressing team in the Premier League, we said that they were going to sit in and let Villa come to them. None of those things were true. We looked terrible in all of our predictions for that.
Yes, I mean, and credit to West Ham because they really threw us for a loop, and I think to an extent Villa for a loop as well. The Tielemans playing at the 10 thing, I do kind of understand because that has been such an effective lineup, and we all know that that Unai Emery likes to stick with what works, usually until it doesn't. But West Ham really did a lot of things that I would not have expected, and Jared Bowen played really well. Don't want to discount that because he's such a great player. But I thought that West Ham coming down the opposite channel was unexpected by you and I, clearly, because we didn't think it was going to happen. But also I think Aston Villa didn't expect it. And I thought I thought they really more than held their own, particularly in the first half. I thought they kind of controlled that mid final third, and they looked the much more dangerous side throughout the first half almost entirely.
I completely agree. Crescencio Somerville, shout out Team Was. We represent him. Fantastic day. He looked a threat every single time he got on the ball, causing Villa all kinds of problems. And like you said, I think much like us, Unai Emery was expecting more of the push down that right hand side. It was not. Matty Cash got caught out of position on a few different occasions, and Ezri Konsa was made to look the fool a couple different times, but most notably 38 seconds in. And this was the other thing that West Ham did that they have never really done all season long, and that was press high and press hard. Super aggressive, really seemed to catch Ezri Konsa off balance. He was knocked off that ball way too easy. Rare bad game from him, so I'm not going to crush him for it that much. But that being said, throughout the first half and honestly into the second, it felt like West Ham were pressing hard even through the middle third of the pitch, and Villa weren't really ready to cope with the pressure. A lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy passing, and it led to a lot of opportunities for West Ham going the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I thought West Ham played a great first 45. I mean, they had a really good game throughout for me, but that first 45 in particular, they were so effective in the press. And I think some of it was because Aston Villa didn't expect it, like we talked about. But I also want to shout out, like Wan-Bissaka, I thought had a great game for West Ham. Like their ability to push Villa players off the ball deep in their own territory, so to speak, was really what changed the game throughout most of the first half. And Villa just could not break down that press. And you would think with such an aggressive and strong and consistent press that there would be space behind to open up and find your way to work into. But Villa just weren't able to get the ball out hardly at all, in particularly in the first 15, 20 minutes. But I was really impressed with how well West Ham and how organized West Ham were as they kept the pressure on Villa. And I mean, going into the second half, I didn't feel confident at all that this was going to go our way.
No, I really didn't. And one of the reasons for that, credit to him for fighting through it. Let's talk about Marco Bizot a little bit, because he's someone over the past few weeks. We talked about how he was very good to start the season, probably becomes a little rusty with the lack of play. I mean, Martinez plays all the time, comes back in, looks a little shaky. I think shot stopping wise and with the ball at his feet, he looked much more comfortable in this game. But there clearly is a tactic now with him that doesn't happen with Emi Martinez, and that is that on corners, long throws, teams are targeting him. They think he's weak. You saw multiple West Ham players really fighting with him throughout the game. Brighton did this to a certain degree as well. Arsenal, we didn't give up that many corners and free kicks around the box, so they didn't get the time to, but they typically are very I won't say dirty, but they exploit the gray areas in some of those free kicks around the goalie. Yeah. And it does seem like much more so than Emi Martinez, teams think that Marco Bizot is a goalkeeper who can kind of be thrown off his game if you just get someone in and around him.
Yeah, I mean, you see guys just putting their hands on him and putting their arms on him and just trying to push him off his spot and make him uncomfortable. And teams are going to do that to the extent that the referee allows it, because like you said, that is a very much gray area in the rule book. And I mean, you saw, I think it was in the previous game where a player just ran up and shoved Bizot before the corner, but just ran up and gave him a shove just to let him know, I'm here and I'm going to make you uncomfortable. And it seems to work, to be honest. And he looked better defending corners and close crosses than he did previously. And some of that, I think, is probably an effect of just having more minutes and more time.
Sure.
So I think he's still going to be, I think he is an effective keeper, and particularly as a backup. But it's difficult to ask to come in and play mostly cold, without getting regular minutes, because Emery's team is always going to be Emi Martinez's team as long as Emi Martinez can go, like we've said many, many times before. So Bizout has to adjust to that role coming from being a consistent number one for how many years, right? It's got to be a difficult adjustment in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So, Chris, I guess I'll ask you, do you think that he was at fault for either of the West Ham goals?
Certainly not the first one, I don't think, because he's put in such a bad spot. Maybe he could have done better with it, but I think it's tough to ask your keeper in that spot to be staring down the barrel like 35 seconds into the game, and particularly when it's your backup keeper. But I think that's a difficult position to be in. Could he have done better with it? Maybe, probably. But am I surprised that he wasn't able to make the stop? No. That's kind of a flaky answer, but that's the best I can give. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think sometimes, you see commentary, I think that because it was such a tight angle, the belief is, oh, he should have had that covered, gotten his hand to it, whatever. Sometimes you have to give the attacker credit for just putting it on a postage stamp exactly where he needs to. And I think the power behind the kick, the placement of it, he put exactly where it had to go. So no, I don't blame Bizot for that. Second one, obviously no chance with how quickly that ball comes in off of Bowen's foot. Again, I I'm not going to crush him for it, but if I'm going to crush him for either of the two, I think the first one was a bit of a surprise and a stumble by Konsa. He kind of hits it with his wrong foot as he goes to turn around. The second one is candidly a lack of effort on his part. Like when you're that far back, when the ball gets cleared out, you step up and you step up quick. And the fact that he kind of half walks, half jogs forward, this one to me is actually less excusable than the first.
On Konsa, though, not on Bizot.
On Konsa, yeah, sorry, on Konsa, yeah.
I agree with that. I think, that's one of the things that I've talked about privately is the leadership at the back, and Konsa is very much a leader in his play, but I don't know that he's the vocal leader that we've seen. And so you're twofold there. You're missing Emi Martinez, who is obviously very vocal, right? And not that Mings maybe would have played in this game, but if he was, Mings is always the vocal center back there. And having watched them live several times now, he's the one you can hear him calling out during the match. You can hear him calling out up or step up or something, to get players to realize you've got to move. And so I wonder. I don't want to use it as an excuse because Konsa just has to be better. There's no question about that. But I wonder if missing those two players and just their communication doesn't have some effect on it. But no excuse, because if Konsa is one of the best center backs in the league, and you and I both believe he is, he has to be smarter and make that play.
Yep. And again, like I said, not indicative of the season that he's having or the player that he is. Everyone is liable to have an off day. This just happened to be a really, really bad off day for Ezri Konsa. Notably, we haven't talked about Villa's goal, the own goal off of Mavropanos. Beautiful cross by John McGinn. I don't really understand how Ollie Watkins jumps in front of it. But ultimately doesn't really matter because it throws the defender off. And man, if he was the attacker, we'd be talking about that's like header of the season from that. That's the way that he placed that one in there.
Yeah. It was the cross is the story there, right? Like that ball in from McGinn was the stuff of dreams in terms of what you want to do when you put a ball in, because Ollie Watkins probably should have just been easily able to head that ball in. Somehow he's way out in front of it, like you said. And I'll take it. It goes back to what I always say, put the ball in front of the net and good things tend to happen. And this is definitely a case of that. Do you want to win just on own goals and low XG? No, but I don't know what that chance was rated, but it has to be a half decent chance XG wise in terms of what could have been created there. The fact that Ollie just was totally misplayed it is the issue on that one. But still take the goal, and you got to give as much credit as you can to McGinn on the cross.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, let's turn ahead to the second half. Villa are down 2-1. Like you said, really wondering at this point, like, are we going to get anything out of this? Commentators kept talking about how we've never won 6 in a row in the Premier League, I believe. And so you're just wondering if this is going to be a banana skin. We're thinking about Sheffield United a couple years ago when we had the opportunity to go top. And then, Chris, the man of the hour, the man of the day, the man of the month, the man of the year, Morgan Rogers. I guess first off, let's give credit. I transparently wasn't sure if Youri Tielemans was the right move in the 10 today, but that run, that cross to find Rogers in the center, beautiful. And then I will ask you, is there anyone more in form than Morgan Rogers right now?
The run from Tielemans, again, that's the second game in a row that we're highlighting a run that he makes. So his ability to position himself with or without the ball is a really impressive thing right now. And in terms of informed players, then more informed than Morgan Rogers, off the top of my head, I can't think of any. He's the amount of confidence with which he is playing right now is just showing through the TV. You can tell how good he feels and how good he feels about his game. And it's a full 180 degrees from the start of the season. And it's not a surprise then that Aston Villa's form has improved as Morgan Rogers has, because he's been one of our most important players now for a couple of years. And as he rises, so does this team. And he had a great second half.
Yeah, unbelievable. The second goal in particular, what was that, like a .02 xG? I think I've seen it quoted as, depending on who you believe. Really cool to see him hit a moving ball with that same kind of knuckle on it that he and Emi Buendia have been practicing on the free kick. That was really impressive, the technique of that one. But before we get into that, and Chris, we're going to do a cold water later where we talk about expected goals and our dear friend XG philosophy. So put a pin in that one for now. What I actually want to talk about, though, is the instant impact that Daniel Malen makes when he comes on. You saw him get the ball and, dribble with a couple guys, hold them off, fire a laser from 25, 30 yards out. And it clearly doesn't always come off for him, right? We talk about him missing opportunities the way that Ollie Watkins misses opportunities. It's so evident that he is so much more effective in this second striker role, where he can get the ball in spots like that, where Ollie Watkins, or in January, another striker, is occupying the two central defenders so he can pick up the ball in space. But what I actually want to talk about and get your opinion on is the fact that the team looks so much more inventive, exciting, and unpredictable with Daniel Malen in it, because perhaps paradoxically, Daniel Malen just has that instinct of wanting to go for goal that I think no one else on the team necessarily has.
Well, particularly early when he comes on, he almost always seems to come on and immediately try for goal, whether it's through a long shot, a short shot, or just driving the ball toward the net. So I think you're right about that. I think he's got, particularly in a substitute's role, he's got a killer instinct where he wants to impact immediately and score goals, because he wasn't that far off on that distance shot from just outside the box, right? If I remember, or was it just inside the box? I can't. It doesn't matter.
It was outside.
Yeah. So like his his ability to play as a sub right now and be a real change of pace is a weapon for this club to deploy. And each time he comes on, it's like an injection of energy, it seems like, so you're right. The team looks much more inventive. And that is at least somewhat down to him and his ability to create and his ability to draw defenders and his ability to drive the ball toward the end line or toward the net, depending on the position he plays, particularly when he's in that second striker role, when he's moving toward the inside. That seems to be his best position. He's having such a great year. You wonder if you're not going to see more starts for him. And I'm sure you will in time, especially in this busy festive period. But he's so effective as a sub. It's not a bad thing to me to bring him on at like 55, 60 minutes and let him run for that long and against, a more tired defense and see if he can create chances that way. It's been a very effective strategy so far.
He and Emi Buendia seem to be occupying a somewhat similar space of these guys that come on, make an instant impact. There's a clamor for them to start. They start, don't necessarily do all that great over the course of 65 minutes as opposed to 30, 35, back to the bench, back to, an impact sub role. They're sort of these like cuspy starters that don't quite fit perfectly into either role. You want more minutes out of them than just being a super sub. And yet when they get that, you're kind of like, man, if we could just condense all their energy into that short period of time again. So, not as you always like to say, not bad to have a bit of a selection headache with a couple players.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the coming in as a sub, the tired legs effect is not something to ignore either. When you're coming on and you're fresh and you're a pacey player like Malin. I mean, Emi Buendia is not so much pacey anymore as he is clever and tricky, right? But that's what you say about guys who don't move that well, right? Or move that quickly, I should say. Malin has a good amount of pace. So when he comes on against guys that have been running for the previous 55 minutes, it's almost like hitting a different gear, So there is an effectiveness to that strategy for that reason as well. Tired legs versus fresh legs.
Yep. So that's kind of it for the game. We talked about Morgan Rogers' winner. What I do want to say in terms of seeing it out though, Chris, is that once Villa got the third, they looked as good as any Pep team that I've ever seen in killing the game off. They were passing the game around, a lot of one-touch stuff. West Ham couldn't get close to them, and it really did feel a bit like any of Pep's clubs over the years, Barca, Bayern, or Man City, where once they get ahead towards the end against a team beneath them who's fought hard, you just know that team is spent. They can't get the ball again. They're never going to get another opportunity because Man City just looks so comfortable and confident on the ball. This to me was unlike Villa teams in the past where, yes, they were good. Yes, they would get on top. But if they were up one goal in a hard fought back and forth game, you always felt like there was going to be another opportunity for the opposition in it, and that we might ride our luck. We might ride some Emi Martinez saves or some late Tyrone Mings blocks. Whereas this one, once we went up, I never really thought that West Ham were going to get another sniff of it the way that we were able to move the ball around.
Same for the last two games, really. They've been very good at killing the game off, like you said. And you're right. It's a total change from what we are accustomed to, because normally it is like white knuckle time when you're up a goal and there's 10 minutes left. I do want to say one thing. If I remember right, West Ham really brought on their substitutions late. I believe they made 4 substitutions after the 80-minute mark. So that's a long time to go against a really high quality side like Aston Villa. They're in the top 4 for a reason. It's so I was surprised by that. I would have thought you would have tried to freshen the legs up earlier than that and try to really get more of a hold of the game, because by the time those substitutions were made, Villa had built so much confidence on the ball that it was going to be difficult to knock them off it, in my opinion.
So I think, and listen, I'm not a West Ham fan. I haven't seen all their games. All I'm going is off of what the commentator said. He made a comment about how West Ham's bench didn't really have any additional attackers on it. All the subs that they made were still kind of like leggy midfielders, a couple defensive midfielders in exchange for
That's
their
ridiculous.
attacking players. So I do wonder if Nuno kind of felt like he didn't have options to bring in because, yeah, you're bringing in someone with more legs, but someone who's, less adept offensively. Um, the other thing for them is that, but for the lean of a shoulder, they're up 3-2
Yep.
at some point, right? So like they were close until Villa got the third and kind of killed the game off. Um, and that is something that we'll need to continue to talk about later. But Chris, if we move towards good points and bad points, this is something that I texted you that I think really bears worth noting publicly. And that is that this really felt like a game where 80 minutes or whatever it was until Morgan Rogers scored, I was gearing up to come on this podcast and say that was the performance of a team that is competing for top four, not a team competing for a title. Pulling out the win in that game is the mark of a team that's competing for a title or that can compete for a title. And what I mean by that is to fight back twice and come away with a point. That's a good team, not a great team. A team that comes back twice and comes away with all 3 points, that's a great team. You saw the same thing with Arsenal the day before against Wolves. Played awfully. Had to ride multiple own goals,
Yeah,
right?
2 own goals.
To win that one. But when they weren't playing their best, they not only got it done, they got it done to a victory. And that's why they are in first place and in pole position to win a title. Villa keeping pace with this victory over West Ham like that cannot be overstated. The winning mentality that shows me from Aston Villa.
Sure. Yeah. And, we've talked a lot about confidence in this podcast. And I think when you get used to winning, you find yourself in winning positions. You find ways to win games. Your confidence in your teammates and your ability is such that you play differently. Those Villa teams, of early Unai Emery, even though we're only in year 4, but of early Unai Emery and of Dean Smith, those were teams that were just trying to stay afloat in the Premier League and then trying to stay afloat in Europe, trying to get to that 7th position, 6th position, 4th position, whatever it may be. Now I think having been under Emery for 4 years, the mission has changed somewhat. I don't think Emery said it explicitly, but the level of expectation of what he expects of the players and what the players expect of themselves is different than what it was 4 seasons ago or in November of 4 years ago. So I think I think you're absolutely right. I think that this is a good win because, look, man, like I told you when we talked or texted, West Ham played well. That was one of their, I think, best games of the season in terms of how they game planned and put an attack together. And maybe you could argue that through some of it, most of it, they deserve the win because they really took advantage of some unexpected weak spots by Aston Villa. So I want to credit West Ham for playing so well and not make it sound like it was just Ezri Konsa not playing his best that led to this. So West Ham played well at home. I know it's not the most fearsome ground in the league, but it's still not Villa Park. And for Villa to come back and get all 3 from that matchup says a lot to me. And I think it's going to be a big 3 points as we go through these festive fixtures. Pardon me.
Yes, I agree. The other thing that I do want to be clear about, I am not saying that we are in a title race still.
Right.
I said that is a win that a title contending team has. I'm saying that there are marks of the DNA there. I am not saying that we are in a title race yet. I still think it's way too early. Talk to me in April.
Yeah, we got 6 months, man. Yeah.
Chris, the other thing that is a good point that will also transition us into bad points is Villa have now won a league-leading 15 points from losing positions. 5 games they have been behind, and they have come back to win those. I'm not sure. I think I know where you're going to fall on this. I'm not sure if this is a good sign or a bad sign.
I think it's more likely a good sign. And the reason I understand why it might be a bad sign, because you're saying you're getting yourself into losing positions, right? And that's a fair point to make. But the wherewithal and the ability to come back and win. Bridget may have just made an appearance on the pod there. She was talking as she walked out of the room. I apologize if that happened.
Didn't hear her.
No, good. Okay. The ability to come back and win shows a lot to me for like we've just talked about. Good teams find a way to win games even when they're not at their best, even when the chips are down, blah, 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 all those things. But so I would take it as a sign that this team is capable of winning and capable of winning from any position against any team. I think we have to look at that in a positive light more so than a negative one.
It is always fun to be the comeback kids. The reason why I placed it in both is because I agree with you. Like, there is a way to look at this of like, that is a winner's mentality. Fergie time, right? United would always come back and win in extra time. And so having that part of your DNA is huge. Being the biggest comeback kids in the league, like you point out, so just to present the counterpoint, says that Villa are going behind a lot. They've gone behind in 8 games. What have we played? 16, right? Half of our games we have gone behind. And so, you can't expect that kind of a come from behind win rate over the course of the season. If you're going to talk about the expected goals, guys, like this would certainly be one of the things that they would equally chalk up to say that this is not sustainable FC, as you and I like to joke back and forth. We'll tie this into the expected goals conversation in a little bit, but I will just say that, like, it's fun to say we have the most points won from losing positions. The stat that I actually like more as an indication of Villa's future success is the fact that we have only lost 2 points from winning positions. That is the league low, or also the league leaders, depending on how you want to look at it. That is a mark of a good, strong team. Chris, do we really need to talk about Ollie Watkins again?
He had a stinker. He was terrible. He was bad, and continues to be. I especially hope that he would kick on after getting the goal, and he just hasn't. And he played terribly. And I mean, I don't mean to pound on the guy here, but imagine what this team would do if he was.
I don't mean to pound on the guy here.
Oh, geez. I'm going to get crushed for that one. So imagine what this team would do if he was halfway in form. Like, you want to talk about expected goals. Imagine what we could do with a striker who was playing to his level. And he's just not right now. And that could be a problem in the long run.
Yeah, as you've always said, a team that's going to compete for top 4, compete for a title, if people want to put us there, like, needs a fit and firing striker. Now, it helps that super sub Daniel Malen has 7 goals, which is a great return for nearly half the season, right? You get 14 goals out of Daniel Malen. That looks pretty good. But yeah, he has not kicked on. And in the Brighton game, I'm 99% sure I came on this podcast and said, this is great. He looked fantastic, but I'm reserving judgment until I see him actually do this over the course of a couple weeks. And he has not. Now, again, like we said before, this is not a call for him to be benched. I said at some point earlier today that Daniel Malen clearly looks so much better in the second striker role. Daniel Malen should not be taking over number 9 duties from Ollie Watkins. I don't think he's effective there, particularly not over 90 minutes. So, what I'm saying more is the fact that we need to figure out how to get him right, or, we're 16 days away from January. We really need to be thinking heavily about investing in this position if we're going to end up where we want to end up at the end of the season.
Yeah, and Ollie Watkins is still massively underperforming his XG. you can't have that for the length of the season. And I know we're going to tie this all into a larger XG discussion, but XG is still a worthwhile statistic to look at the chances being created and the chances a player has. So when a player is underperforming his expected goals to this extent, it bears a conversation, and it bears wondering what's going on.
Yep. So, Chris, before we get to those cold waters, let's look at the larger implication on the season. Biggest thing from the win, we keep pace with Arsenal and City. And more importantly, in my opinion, I'm still looking down, not up. We maintain a 5-point gap over Chelsea. As you wrote to me, the next stretch is huge. So we're basically playing what is it, 5 times before the FA Cup on January 10th. So we have United at home this Sunday, 12/21. Chelsea away December 27th, so 6-day gap. 3 days later, we have Arsenal away. Might as well just stay in London that whole time, December 30th. On January 3rd, we have Forest at home. And then on the 7th, we have Palace away. Might as well just chalk that up as a 4-1.
That's a loss, right? And thank God we've got Forest at home at least, because the City ground is a nightmare. And
Yep.
I know Forest hasn't been the best this season, although they did just beat the living daylights out of Tottenham on the weekend. But
who isn't nowadays?
Yeah, right. So that's the one thing I can take away from that stretch of games is at least United and Forest are at home. I mean, the other they're all going to be difficult games, I think. But I'll take any game we can at Villa Park. But it is an absolutely massive stretch, and I think depending on results, we're going to have an idea of how this team is going to look going into the last half of the season.
So, Chris, people are going to hate me for saying this, but if I told you right now you could get 7 points from those 5 games, would you take it?
I mean, not with the form we're in, no. But that's I understand it's going to be tough to find the points there, but you
think about it.
Beat United, you hope you get 3 against
home.
United at home, right?
So beat United
against.
Well, let me give you this. Let me give you this. Beat United and Forest at home, 6 points. Draw Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, 1. Lose to Arsenal at the Emirates, lose to Palace, which we always do.
Yeah, I wouldn't be thrilled with it, because I think that our recent form, the Villa's recent form, and I mean Chelsea's not been great, over the last couple of games.
Chelsea's been bad in December.
Yeah,
very bad.
Arsenal don't look invincible, so I would like to get more out of those games. I don't know if we will, but that's why I think this is such an important stretch. If you want to position yourself to be in a title challenge down the road, you have to come out with results here.
So let me ask you this other question then, Chris. Let's say you got here's the question. Is the manner in which you get the points different to you than just the number of points in the end? And put aside for the sec that obviously 6-point swings, whereas a point is a point for each of you and all that kind of stuff. Let me just say that if at the end of these 5 games, let's say you win 1, draw 4, as opposed to win 2, draw 1, lose 2. Or, in the case of 9 points, you win 2, draw 3. So theoretically, you continue the unbeaten run as opposed to win 3, lose 2. Do you feel differently coming out of those?
Probably. Yeah, I probably do. I thought you were getting more into if you got a scruffy win, how would you feel about it versus
no, I've said so many times, holiday season, you take any win.
Points on the board, right?
Manner does not. Manner of victory does not matter.
But yes, so I think if you won 1, draw 4 versus winning more and losing a couple, I think you feel differently. Yes, particularly if they are draws where you feel like you could have won. Right, individual games are gonna kind of color your feeling, I think, on this. But it is such a massive stretch now, and I think it's just fun to be in this position. Really, if we're being honest, it's a nice place to be, and I'm really enjoying always kind of being around the conversation at this point in the year for the last couple of years.
I agree. Well, I will end this by going on record and saying during this season, there are weird results up and down the league. If we end these 5 games with 9 points minimum, I'm happy. Genuinely, I'm happy.
I mean, I think I'd like 9. I think I'd like 9 out of it. I'd obviously love more, but I
Sure.
think 9
Of course
points
you'd love more.
I
Yeah.
think 9 points is a realistic goal. And that's how you know that we are the lukewarmest podcast on earth.
Yep. So, Chris, with that theme of lukewarmism, I just made that word up. Let's turn our attention to cold water. To all of our new subscribers, new listeners, this is where we take hot takes that we see online and we determine whether we feel like they are actually hot takes in need of cold water to kind of temper them down, get down to lukewarm, or whether they are appropriately measured. So, Chris, someone that we've cited quite often on this podcast, actually, XG Philosophy, seems to have a vendetta over the course of the past couple of weeks towards Aston Villa. He had the Grim Reaper door tweet where you can't escape XG, went for Liverpool, then went for Spurs, and it was knocking at Villa's door. Villa score the goal from 0 XG, the own goal from John McGinn. And he tweets out actually what I said he should use beforehand, the Jesse Pinkman, they can't keep getting away with this meme. Chris, you wrote me a novel in text over this. So I'm going to give you the floor for a second. And all I will say is that to further complicate expected goal matters, everybody keeps talking about this Opta expected points table, right? Based on expected points, expected goals. They have a 16th on expected points table. However, Chris, Opta also has a predicted end of year table. Where are we in that? 3rd. So
with
somehow
87% to finish in the top 4. Like that's their their projection right now.
And we're only 5 points up on it at this point. So, it is interesting to see that despite saying we have grossly overperformed to date, Opta clearly, when we talk about regression, and I've talked about 2 ways of regression, either Villa's going to come down or the performance are going to come up to meet the winning. Clearly, Opta is seeing much more of the latter than the former. And that's where I'll stop it and turn the floor over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so I am not anti-XG at all. I have read James Tippett's book. I own it. I would show you a copy of it, but I'm pretty sure I loaned it out to my father-in-law, which happens with every book that I have.
Shout out Big Walt.
That's right. And I never get them back. But Walter, if I did send it to him, he will return it. I don't want to call him out. He's the one who does return my books. But so I own the book. I've read it. I follow the Twitter account, and I think the issue I have is that XG has become sort of this lightning rod for online discourse, and people look solely at the XG numbers and say, okay, team A had a higher XG than team B. Team A deserved to win that game. And my whole thing with any statistical measure, XG or otherwise, is that none of them exist in a vacuum. And statistics are a good measure of long-term results potentially, and taken into account with other factors, other things, they can show you weaknesses and strengths. So I am pro XG. What I am anti is this idea that we're not that we don't watch sports with our eyes. Because yes, that shot from Morgan Rogers, was a 0.02 XG. So 1 out of 50 go in, right? But that's not necessarily true, in real terms. It doesn't take into account the player shooting the ball. It doesn't take into account their form and confidence, the things you can't, quantify. It doesn't take much account into from the goalkeeper. It's really just about shot distance and likelihood that shot is going to go in. I mean, Rodgers had probably 5 yards to look down the pitch and put the ball in the net. Pardon me as I cough for one So some of those things, there's no perfect model, right? Is I guess what I'm getting at there. And to draw it to American baseball, I like to make this correlation because what you see on online discourse around XG is very similar to what you see online in America about exit velocity now. So people only look at how hard a ball is hit off the bat and not whether or not that ball was hit directly at a defender. And now, like I said before, if you hit the ball hard, that's generally a good thing, right? But there are other factors that you need to consider. I would rather have someone hit a blooping, line drive that drops for a base hit and scores 2 runs than someone who hits a rocket back to first base and it's directly at the first baseman. So you have to actually watch the sport with your eyes. That's not to say that West Ham maybe didn't outplay Aston Villa. Like I talked about, West Ham played a great game. You could argue they deserved to win that game. They based on the XG philosophy, they created better chances. That's true, or at least objectively to me, it's true. But Aston Villa finished theirs, and that's what matters. My big overarching point to this rant, and I will cut it off after this, is that actual goals are more important than expected goals. And I want to see a team score, not rack up a bunch of very good chances.
So I would add a couple things to what you would say then, because we talk about XG on this podcast all the time, right? Every time we do our scouting, we see whether the team is overperforming, underperforming their XG, and we make assumptions based off of that in terms of how we scout them. So there's a couple things. One thing that I will give you credit for is that you have said that you believe this to be a tactic of Unai Emery's. We saw how much Villa struggled within the first 5 games of the season to break teams down in a low block and create some of the close, arguably tap-in opportunities that they've thrived off of for the past few seasons, because teams were just cramming their own box and cramming the middle, and Villa had all these central players that couldn't do anything with that. So the long shots were potentially a tactic to get the defense to be more honest. They now have to step out on Morgan Rogers, which allows him to slip Ollie Watkins in behind, or Daniel Mallon, or whoever. So, it's sort of, I use the comparison, we're comparing to all the American sports now, the comparison to basketball. If you have no 3-point shooters, then none of your guys that get into the lane, your Jalen Brunsons, your Giannis Antetokounmpos, your whoever's, can be effective because they're just going to clog the lane. They don't respect your jumper. Villa needed to get teams to respect the jumper a little bit. And now that they've scored so many low XG shots from outside, now teams should theoretically open up a little more, step out on them, and allow them to score in some other ways. So, you could potentially see a regression to the mean actually in their expected goal opportunities going up as they're able to create more and more opportunities in behind. The other thing that I'll say is that, XG is kind of like, what, given the distance from goal, the proximity of the nearest defender, like all that kind of stuff, what is the probability that a player would score that goal? Kind of like wins above replacement, an average player. Villa are in 3rd place. They don't have a lot of average players. They have players with skill, with ability that work on some of these things. So, there is inherently a bit of a higher probability that they will convert those, again, to respect the jumper, to open things up so that teams step out and they can create more in behind. So, it's not a perfect metric in that respect either. Now, to contradict myself a little bit and to give XG philosophy a little bit of credit, for a large part of this season, I have been on here every single week, sometimes twice a week, and said our performances suck. I know we're getting results out of it, but we look awful. And there's potentially going to be a regression to the mean of results starting to match the performances, which do not inspire me with confidence. I will hold up my hand and say that I was wrong. Villa have continued to get better week over week over week over week. And so that expected goal differential is getting smaller and smaller and smaller each week, even if it remains large. And so, I do wonder if you were to remove the first 5 games I mean, hell, even after we started winning, let's remove the first 8 games of the season. What was it over the first 8 games versus the second 8 games? And where would we be in expected points tables there? My guess would be a lot higher. So, to your point, you look at one metric in isolation without any level of context, mitigating factors, all that kind of stuff. I need to pour some cold water on the idea that this is coming for us. Now, if XG philosophy expanded his take to be more along the lines of like, because of these underlying metrics, Villa are not true title contenders, I'd probably say, yeah, you're probably right. Like that is probably accurate. That's probably one of the reasons why we will not compete for a title at the end of the season. But to say we're going to fall down to 8th, 10th, or have some type of catastrophic drop off the way Liverpool and Spurs have, their performances never got better over the course of the time that they were outperforming XG. They were just outperforming XG. Our performance have gotten better, and so that's why I don't expect a fall off the way that they have had one.
Exactly. Much more reason take as usual.
Chris, this is one where I want you to just kind of talk about some stats that you found because you just kind of crushed it on this one. And I don't think that you're going to pour any cold water on this because objectively it's very true. In the year 2025, Villa are as good as anyone.
They are. I mean, that is objectively true. Like you said, they have 70 points after 35 games. The only teams above them are City and Arsenal. Arsenal have 74 after 36, and City have 74 after 35 in the calendar year 2025. League games only, obviously there. So that is like that. They in the year 2025. I mean, I don't like doing like fake trophies or something like that because Arsenal could hold that up and say we were the best team in 2025, and if they finish second again this year, like it doesn't matter. But in terms of form and how the team have played, they've shown over this calendar year, which we are almost at the end of, that they can play with anyone in the Premier League, and that is just a testament to the philosophy and system that Villa have built, largely with Unai Emery. But you also have to credit the buy-in of the players: Matty Cash, Yuri Tielemans, John McGinn, even Ollie Watkins from. I guess he hasn't really had a great 25, but still, like just the credit or the buy-in to what could be a very difficult system to play in, because his Unai Emery's expectations in detail are extremely high. And you and I talked about when he was first appointed that one of the dangers is that it becomes monotonous or it becomes difficult because the walkthroughs and the preparation sessions and the film sessions are so detailed and so intense and so long oftentimes that you worry about the player's ability to sustain that. But so far, not only have they sustained it, but by and large, they've improved. I know we made Champions League one year and we're down to Europa the next, but if you look at the team on the whole, given what we've been able to buy and had to sell, you have to be super pleased with the results as they're coming in.
I completely agree. I have nothing to add on that
So
one.
no cold water, I guess. I didn't say this.
No,
like I didn't do the bit.
No cold water. All right, Chris. Anything else that you want to add on this one?
No, I'm all good. I think I've said enough, for God's sakes.
All right, Chris. Well, let's get you a cup of tea. We will be back in a couple days with our Manchester United preview. Yeah, honestly, another great win. We will see what we can do against quite a bogey team, but like I said, we'll be back in a couple days.
Do you want to shout out the new subscribers?
On that one. Yes, sorry. Good shout. Good shout. Shout outs. New subscribers on YouTube: Joe Plays Guitar and Ed Cox. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Villarati crew. Hope you stick around. And yeah. But as we say, slide tackle into those DMs. We're always happy to engage.
We do say that.
Hey, you say that too, by the way. You said you never would, but you do. All right. with that, let's wrap this up. Chris, it was a pleasure talking to you as always. Feel better, my friend. And as always, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.